bring all these advocacy groups together. We were doing things in each of our own host countries. How do we share the best practices of what we're doing so we're not reinventing the wheel each time you move from point to point? So it made sense that all of us as advocacy organizations come together and say, how do we share resources? How do we build on the strengths that we present today? Next slide, please, Sean. So when you're thinking about who makes up GSDA, as I said before, founding directors, of course, Mayank Shah, Laura Berry, Gary Joseph, and myself. We also have, as I said, Yang Lun from China, who also sits with us. On the advisory side, we wanted to work with organizations who have global programs, those who actually bring their best practice and their advice, their strategic advice to the table, and we can work with. So I'd like to acknowledge EY, Teresa Harrison, BMS, Rondu Vincent, Accenture's Nitra Dixon, GSK Will Holmes, Cummings Helena Hutton, Merck Raul Suarez Rodriguez, and IBM Andrea Fimian. They provide advice to us on how we move forward and how we are trying to make sure we bring as much information and bring as many opportunities to the table as possible for the MBEs who want to go worldwide or the globals who want to, the corporates who want to go worldwide. Next slide, please, Sean. Now, in essence, what we've tried to do is we try to make this very simple. We have three particular pillars that we are looking at. How do we drive knowledge? How do we make the network work? And how do we advocate for opportunities? So we are working together to try to, and as I said, we've just formalized it this year. We've been an informal association for the last couple of years, running a number of events to get everyone connected. And now we've decided now is the time to make as much formality, because we believe the time is now that for the global to actually work, to grow, and for you to be able to have the opportunities. So stay tuned and you will hear more from us as we go through on what knowledge we are bringing together, how you can access that, what the network, and how we get people connected across the globe, and what we as advocacy groups can do to make sure opportunities are brought forth to you. So as I said, stay tuned for that because that will be coming. Now, without further ado, and the reason we're all connected here today, I would like to introduce to you my co-host, Rondu Vincent, the Director of Supplier Diversity for Bristol Myers Squibb. So without further ado, Rondu, please.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. You know, as Cassandra just said, I serve on the advisory council and have done so for a number of years. And I can truly say it's been an honor to see the innovation, see the thoughtfulness in which the GSDA members have come together and collaborate. So to the presidents and also to my fellow advisory council members, thank you for your leadership and the forward thought thinking on how we advance the global of supply diversity. So thank you. And when it comes to COVID-19, there's no doubt that the past few months have been tough, with everybody impacted in some way by this global pandemic. In this series, we will hear from corporate leaders, minority business owners, and the global council presidents on how they have navigated the COVID-19 crisis. And we look forward to sharing these thoughts in the coming weeks. For our first webcast today, we have a stellar panel of senior procurement leaders joining us from Australia, Canada, South Africa, the UK, and the United States to discuss their global approach to supply diversity during and post-COVID-19. We will learn how they are keeping supply diversity front and center in their respective regions and the lessons they are taking over other jurisdictions. There is no doubt that we face considerable challenges by the economy and the move in many countries to focus on a more nationalistic approach to supply. How will this affect supply chain dynamics, and how will supply chains need to adapt while at the same time, as we all want to do here, keep supplier diversity included and at the front of the line? I would now like to hand this panel over to your moderator for today, Mr. David J. Ward, Principal from Vantage Partners, UK. David has deep expertise in international leadership, team management, and dynamic changing business environments. David has also led teams for major organizations such as GSK, Merck, Siemens, across multiple geographies, including Europe, emerging markets, and Asia Pacific. Amongst his many accolades and positions And selfishly, I'm going to say one of the biggest personally for me is David was the former chairperson of MSD UK. Shout out to my aunt, and continues to be a strong advocate for diversity and inclusion. Please virtually welcome Mr. David J. Ward.
Thank you very much, Rondu. Thank you. It's such a kind introduction and very much appreciated. It's a pleasure to be here with you all this morning, this evening, this afternoon, and thank you to the GSDA for asking me to host this event. As Rondu says, I've been involved in supply diversity for quite a long while now, particularly with MIANC and the Minority Supply Diversity Council here in the UK. We were lucky enough to hold a couple of seminars last week on some of these themes that we're going to talk about today. So we've got starting to see a very broad range of responses to some of the challenges, and hopefully today we'll build on those a little bit further. So COVID-19 has provided significant challenges, as Rondu says, to just about everybody in the world. Certainly everybody that we're all working with and those that we live with, family, friends, professional colleagues, have all been impacted in some way. The organizations we work with, whether they are big or small, have all been impacted in some way. And of course, our desires for equality and social justice and supply diversity have also been impacted, not just by COVID-19, but by the other elements of upheaval and civil unrest that we've seen quite broadly across the world, demonstrating that the need for equality is worldwide and that the calls for equality are also worldwide. And supply diversity, if it does anything, is start to address some of those calls for equality within supply chains, within big organizations, and of course, hopefully across those diverse suppliers that we want to see far more included in supply strategy in some of the bigger organizations. So the scene is set really, and what we saw last week in some of the UK calls was very much both from corporates and from diverse suppliers, this call to say now is the time to start to drive to action. It's easy for us all to drift into rhetoric. It's much harder for us all to turn the handle that bit further and actually make some real change and some real difference. But I think if we're learning anything in these current times is that it's unacceptable not to drive change. It's unacceptable just to do what we've always done. So now is the time, and I believe everybody should feel they have the mandate and the responsibility and the accountability to start to drive that change that we all want to see within the societies and the organizations that we work for. So hopefully today we're going to go pick up on some of those themes as we then focus in on a post-COVID world. And of course, what do we mean by that? That's a very challenging statement, because what a post-COVID world almost certainly won't be is the same world that it was before COVID. So I don't think anybody is now expecting us to return to a world that was the same as the one that we left when this epidemic started towards the last quarter of last year. So what we will be seeing, therefore, is some kind of new normal. What that is, I don't think any of us exactly know, but we've probably all got plans and ideas about what it might be. So hopefully we're going to hear a little bit from some of our panel as well about this concept of the new normal and what it might mean for organizations, and then critically what it means for inclusion and diversity as regards suppliers and supply chain management going forward through, well, who knows, through into an indefinite future for us all. So I'd like to introduce the panel and ask them to spend a few minutes introducing themselves today. As Rondu says, we've got a really great panel today with some significant representation from some of the biggest and boldest companies in the world. So this is truly a great honor to be hosting this session with these folks. So if I could ask Jim, Will, Kiruba, Amy, and Zandili to join, that would be great. Thank you very much. And again, everybody, we will be taking questions. So if you've got questions, please post them in the chat as we go forward. And we're going to try and get to some of those at the end of the session. And we will try and process any that we don't get to, and maybe as some feedback that we can send later on after the conference. I'm going to try and moderate this virtually, so bear with me. The technology hopefully is going to be on our side, but now that I've said that, it probably will fail. But hopefully we've got robust technology here that's going to enable us to work like we would if we were all together in the room. And I'm going to try and call on these fine people to give us their view across a range of subjects to do with supplier diversity post-COVID-19. But first, let's hear from them and let's hear them introduce themselves. Could we start with Jim from Cummins? Jim, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously, firstly, it's an honour to be asked to come and attend on the panel. And good morning, good evening, and wherever you are in the world, you know, it's a real honour. So it's Jim Johnson here. I work for Cummins, and I'm indirect purchasing sourcing manager. And my role, I look after facilities and construction within the UK and the Middle East. So it covers a broad range of goods and services, from things like environmental through to the construction of brand new buildings. I've been heavily involved with MSC UK for a good number of years now. I like and really enjoy supporting their innovation challenge that they have. We replicate similar challenges within the business, and it's a fantastic way of seeing the ideas that are out there on the marketplace.
Wonderful. Thanks, Jim. And again, thanks for your time today. Look forward to hearing from you. Could we go to my friend Will Holmes over at GSK? Will, welcome.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. This is Will Holmes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I'm sure many friends and colleagues and associates on the line. I am the Global Director for Supplier Diversity at GSK. As I look at, being in the year 2020 and realizing that I'm coming up on 10 years being involved in supplier diversity in one way or another, and couldn't be more proud to have this role, especially during times that we're in right now. So excited to participate today, and also, as mentioned earlier, serve on the Advisory Council for GSDA. So looking forward to the engagement today, and hopefully even the questions that we already have prepared, but looking forward to any other additional questions or further engagement afterwards.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Will. Pleasure to have you here. Kiruba, could we jump to you, please, sir?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Thank you, GSDA, for giving the opportunity to bring all the global leaders together. My name is Kiruba Sankar, and I'm the global lead for supplier diversity as well as responsible procurement at RBC Global Procurement. In some other regions, it's RBC Wealth Management or RBC Capital Market. In the US, we also have City National Bank. So we have various subsidiaries of RBC, which is Royal Bank of Canada. So I represent across the globe for supply diversity and supporting all my business units together. My responsibility is to develop the global strategy and execution of the program. I also look after the responsible procurement side, ensuring our supply chain is responsible. On the environmental side as well, I run a climate control on the supply chain program as well. Being on the RBC global procurement for the last 10 plus years, I came into the bank initially to support the IT procurement, and then I got involved in some of the supply diversity initiatives, and then got sucked into it with the interest. I kind of took over the program. I was doing dual role between IT procurement and the supply diversity together, but in 2017. Our organization decided that that we wanted to expand beyond Canada, so they kind of asked me to move this as a full-time role, focusing on expanding the program from Canada to the other regions as well. So the last 2 years, I have been pushing the program in US, in UK, and slowly getting into the other markets as well. But our global procurement, we have 150 staff in 7 different geographies in the global market. Wherever we have operation and procurements are there, we are trying to implement the program. And I'm very glad to be participating and connecting, various business units together. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiruba, and a pleasure to have you. Sounds like you've got an exciting challenge there at the bank. Thank you. Could we jump over to Amy? And again, Amy, welcome, but also thanks. I guess it must be late in the evening where you are, but thank you for joining, and it'd be lovely to hear from you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yes, it is late, but that's okay. I'm actually quite used to doing a late night call with all my colleagues, or an early morning. So I know some of them are joining at the moment. But I did want to thank the GSDA for the opportunity to join the discussion today. And I really look forward to the conversation with my fellow global panelists. And as mentioned, I'm the Asia Pacific Inclusive and Sustainable Procurement Leader here at EY. And I'm part of an amazing global team with colleagues in the US, Canada and UK, and report to Teresa Harrison, our Global Inclusive and Sustainable Procurement Leader. So I live here in Melbourne, Australia, on Wurundjeri country, and I did want to just take a moment to acknowledge the land on which I stand and acknowledge our elders past, present and emerging. And a large focus of my role is our Indigenous procurement program here in Australia. But I did want to mention that we're just starting to see a lot more discussion and movement in New Zealand in both the government and corporate sector, which is really exciting to see. So I'm really looking forward to putting a lot more effort into how that movement can move forward and supporting the efforts there.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amy, and great to have your perspective from your part of the world. Much appreciated.
No problems.
Finally, our last panel member today, last but absolutely not least, we have Zandili from South Africa. Zandili, if you can hear us, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, thank you very much, David. And I just hope that you didn't leave me for last because you were grinching to mention my name, but you did very well. As David said, I'm Zandile Njamela, and I am coming to you straight from South Africa. I lead Accenture's Supply, Inclusion and Diversity for our Africa region, and I am part of our bigger global team with colleagues situated in all of our continents under the leadership of Nedra Dixon. Also in country, I am the chairperson of our Accenture South Africa Employment Equity, and that is part of our local legislation, which is the BEE, Black Economic, Broad-Based Economic Empowerment. So I sit in that committee as a chairperson, but also I sit as a board member for the South African Diversity Council under the leadership of Gary Joseph. I'm excited to be here with you today, and I look forward to the fruitful engagement.
Wonderful. Thank you, Zandili. Pleasure to have you here. Okay. So thank you for that. That's our panel, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to hear some exciting things from them as we go through, I'm sure. And as mentioned, my name is David Ward. I'm with Vantage Partners, and we are specialists in relationship management, negotiation strategy, and finding mutually beneficial outcomes to alliances and business relationships for clients around the world. And it's very, very exciting to be introducing not only these teams, but also this theme at this particular time in the history of our world, because we can all see there is so much call for change, and it's time really that we could all start to drive that change, and no better forum than this one to continue that challenge. So let's start with the first series of questions. We're going to look at supplier diversity in a post-COVID world and really think specifically around procurement strategies. So from our panel, I'm going to call first on Jim, if I could, Jim, to think about this challenge about where does supplier diversity fit in a post-COVID-19 procurement strategy? And perhaps the first part of that for you, Jim, have you seen any concern, or have you been concerned that supplier diversity as an initiative might have been overshadowed, in fact, by the COVID-19 outbreak?
I think, in fact, it's probably the opposite from our perspective. We've sort of seen that, yes, it's a challenge. You know, we're all working at home. I've got my son downstairs, home learning today. You know, it's a very odd challenge, but yeah. I think it really is offered an opportunity, and it's something, you know, we've had a lot of visibility of. I think where in my day-to-day role, you know, I would get people coming to me and saying, oh, Jim, you know, we need this, we need that, where can we go? The usual sources of supply have dried up. The government is buying them, you know, we can't get hold of them. How can you support? And so I think the strategy of diversity has strengthened rather than been weakened at all. It's been a real opportunity for those suppliers. We through MSD UK were given a list of key suppliers who could help us with PPE, for example. Mm-hmm. We were able to disseminate that around the business and say, give these companies a chance. We think they've got sources, they can meet our needs. And so they've had a real good opportunity off the back of that, and we've seen spend grow quite a lot as a consequence. So I think it's given a gateway to a lot of key stakeholders in the business to say, this is what diverse businesses can bring. You don't need to go to the usual sources. And I think the sort of result that we had, certainly in the UK region, we were fortunate because obviously we're a global business. We had a bit of visibility of what happened in China. So we were able to start putting some plans in place in advance. So we set up a sort of a centralized procurement hub for PPE goods and supplies. And we've spent, nearly £1 million now on that within the region. And we know 86% of that spend came and went to diverse businesses because they were best placed to meet our needs. And that's obviously come about through the relationships we've grown over the years. And I think a lot of that spend came from the sites themselves, reaching out to suppliers and seeing that, those businesses are out there to support you. So I think in answer to your question, it's more of an opportunity now, I think, and it's shone a light on the kinds of businesses that are out there to support people.
Sure, and reassuring and a good start to our conversation that you're seeing that actually additional emphasis on the opportunities and the innovation for the use of diverse suppliers, and perhaps an open-minded approach by your business to engage with those as well. Will, could I jump to you and think about building on that same question about to what degree supplier diversity has managed to maintain its focus within an organization like yours at GSK, and how are you managing that with what must be some of the challenges you're also getting from your bigger, more corporate suppliers and their desires to want to keep working with you as well?
Yeah, in fact, David, I think just to offer a different perspective too, I echo everything that Jim just shared. And I think in the early parts of COVID, I think supplier diversity programs, at least, for me personally, I'll speak just for me, but I think in the early goings of it, we had the challenge of, oh, wait a minute, we can't bring in suppliers in to meet anybody in person. We can't go to conferences to meet suppliers. So we had to cancel matchmaking session. We had, it was just this series of bad news on top of what was already, just bad news for society across the country and the globe. But I think as things moved forward, and again, as Jim mentioned, it was that pivot to realize that, wait, there's a huge opportunity here because of the agility, the flexibility, especially that quick pivot that a lot of small businesses can make to be able to really provide and meet the needs of larger corporations during this time. One thing that we realized at GSK was an opportunity to say, wait, we need to put a strategy around this. I think being able to show our internal folks that there were several diverse suppliers that could meet needs, especially when you have a lot of situations where travel bans and you couldn't ship things from certain countries and things like that, to be able to say, hey, here's a local diverse supplier in this remote region that can meet a need, or here's even a US or UK supplier that can pivot and now provide simple things like masks that that we couldn't get from our bigger suppliers. That's been huge. And the category managers have been open arms about getting these listings of suppliers. The advocacy organizations have really stepped up to support supplier diversity programs to be able to say, hey, here's a full list for you of all of our suppliers across the globe that can provide all these different materials. And we've really put together now a whole list and a file that we're sharing that covers by category, by item, by supplier, by location. I think that's powerful as we go forward, especially.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Let me just build on that with another question, if I may, which was around agility. So So what we all know and we all believe around diverse suppliers, one of the great advantages is that ability to be agile, to be flexible, to provide those new sources, to think differently around some of the challenges we have. But often the challenges is the big corporate themselves being agile enough to adopt that. It sounds like you've been successful in that internally as well.
Yeah, like I said, I think it was open arms. Once we put the first feelers out there to say that, hey, here's an opportunity. We know that everybody has pain points trying to identify high demand items that are short on supply, and here's a couple suppliers that can do this. I will say, I mean, in the early parts of just kind of putting it out there, I didn't really know what the reaction would be, and really be honest with you, I think the first reactions that I got were really the suppliers responding to the category managers and copying me and saying what they did or didn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, wow, everybody is buying into this and going after it. So again, it's just been really good to see. And I think as time has progressed and just everything that's going on in society, right? I mean, I know we're focused on COVID right now, but the things that were brought to the forefront of attention have just kind of accelerated the opportunities, I think.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a theme we're going to hear throughout today because it's very real for us all. Is COVID is clearly the background for today's discussion, but we know it's a background that's been shaped by other pressing issues in society as well. And it's good to see that organisations are also starting to hopefully take notice there. Kiruba, could I jump to you and just again build on this idea about where supplier diversity fits in a post-COVID landscape and in a procurement strategy? Do you feel that your organisation, the Bank of Canada, that you're more attuned to supporting now those those diverse supply bases? Is that an area that you've been able to adopt relatively quickly, or is it still presenting challenges and complexity for you?
Yeah, I think if you look at from when the pandemic hit, in March, the supply chain is disrupted. The large suppliers who has multiple large accounts, either they're supporting the financial industry, and the same time if they're supporting the health sector. So those are the suppliers where struggled to meet the demand of the non-health sector supplies because their focus was put on the health sector.
Yeah.
So when we look at it from our large suppliers who have been supposed to supply those products, we were not able to get in, which really created an operational risk, right? So we also have to support the community on the banking side. We have to keep our 780 branches out of 1,500 branches across the nation to be open to support the clients. But the banking staff also need the PPE items where the supply was not coming in. So that really created a challenge as an operational risk, right? And during the time, when I was getting from diverse suppliers, standard emails and various emails coming in to show that they were able to supply. And then I started to forward my emails to my category managers who deal with that. And then suddenly, it turned out they were going through the challenge of not getting the supply. And I am getting a flow of, diverse suppliers are rushing to us to say they can support us. So that brought us immediately a switch from my management asking, Kiruba, just could you help us on handling the pandemic side, right? So at the same time, I was affected with, not able to participate on events across the globe. So I was able to reshift myself to support because we had the connections with the diverse suppliers able to onboard and bring them in. And that really a spotlight for, how diverse suppliers really shined during that challenging situation. So we started to onboard suppliers direct, so We kind of disrupted, with all the disruption, we decided to jump on working with the suppliers, onboarding them, able to meet the supply. And then you can see the shift taking place, like, people started to understand, management started to, the crisis management team, we had various teams started to feel that, how we got the supply, how that, the program, we have been running a supply diversity program for many years in Canada. And one of our purpose is helping the community to be prosper. So with that purpose-driven mindset, we kind of looked at it how, these suppliers came in, and then we looked at it also, why did they really came in to help organization like us during the crisis time? Is also the payback. What they have said is, we have seen organization doing like this for many years, we want to support you. So there are some suppliers really, it was touching my heart to say that, they came and helped us to supply. They didn't increase the price. They increased the production to meet our branch operation. That became a spotlight with our management and everyone, that, how diverse suppliers was able to play a strong role and keeping the supply chain active. So that's going to be moving forward. Like, even in the past category strategies, we never had PPE as a category, right? We normally, it got bundled into your office supplies or janitorial supplies. It always got into it. But post COVID, that became a prominent category now. Now, a strategy has to be built on that as well. And that could be on the risk perspective, it's a very critical supply chain because it has disrupted. We have seen the risk in the operation. So that's going to have a big highlight on that category. And more, opportunity is going to come for the diverse suppliers. And it has been proven that, how the suppliers are able to pivot and support and, change the disruption period. It will have more prominence of them getting more opportunity in the future as well.
Wonderful. And we're going to return to that theme of sustainability as well in a second. So I'm glad you've started to touch on that piece around, how great it is that diverse suppliers can support when there is a crisis. But of course, what we want to build is a supply base that then goes on to support, when we go back to whatever our view of new normal is and become integral to part of our world. So I'm going to come back to that theme in a second, but thanks for teeing that up. Could I jump to Amy in Australia? And again, thanks for being with us, Amy. Really thinking again about this question of where supply diversity fits in this post-COVID landscape, particularly regard procurement strategies. Could you give me a bit of a view from your part of the world, but also within your industry sector of professional services?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our biggest focus, I know everyone has touched on PPE quite a lot, and the demand of what we've needed for our staff has not been as great as some, only because our main priority at the start of COVID was to move everyone to remote working. So, for example, here in Oceania, we moved 8,000 staff to all remote working or working at home. So that kind of looked a little bit different to others. Whereas, as we've all now started to look to returning to work, of course, the PPA requirements are different there. But when we think about where it's affected us here at EY from a professional services perspective, has been around our travel, meetings and events. It's been around our technology and the technology demands that we've needed to kind of move, both our stakeholders, being the technology, and our procurement technology teams have had to really move quite effectively and efficiently to enable that move, that we can continue, looking at things like Microsoft Teams making that progress move a lot quicker, so that we can continue to work with our clients, really strongly communicate a lot clearer, and keep that teaming of all our professional service consultants quite close. And, from a travel and meeting and events, even my own and my whole team, as a few of us have mentioned, our whole agenda for the year is gone. There is no travel, meeting and events. And I don't think, for the next 6 months at least, there won't be much movement at all. So, you know, EY has a big focus on ensuring that not only our EY people, but, you know, our clients and our communities are all safe. So they really want to limit that impact. So I think it's a matter of how do we keep this, how do we keep that going? How do we need to now meet? What are the new different ways that we're seeing? And I think we're going to see a lot more, while things are on hold, we're going to start to see a lot more virtual events. And, you know, we can already see it with online trade shows and experiencing online booths, things like that. So I think that's all changing.
Some interesting points there about procurement strategy there. So the shift in really emphasis on different categories, because different categories of spend have become more important. And you quite rightly mentioned home working. I was talking to one of my clients recently. So home working for his organizations means that the IT procurement folks have had to source monitors and all this kind of, which wouldn't have been a priority item before. So beyond PPE, it's these other categories, I guess, that have started to become more strategic for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really has grown, and it depends. EY, as you know, is a huge organization. So every region is different as well as to what our needs are and where our people are set up. You know, throughout Asia, it's not so easy for our staff to work remotely. So it was really trying to ensure that well-being is also considered. And even the messaging throughout EY has been consistent of, we're all in this together, but remembering that it's okay to have children that may pop up in the background, and that, you know, meetings can grow, and this is how we all team. And that's been an amazing thing to see, actually, because I've had 2 children at home with me. And I think that my team has got to know my children so much better. And, you know, even when my son turned 5, you know, the birthday wishes came through for him. They didn't know him as much before, or my local team. But, you know, people in how we're all working remotely has been different. And, you know, we've had a lot more interest in Asia for the desks at home that allows them to stand, you know, and work at a different side of desk. So everything has to change how we think now of how we're going to go forward.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'm hoping everybody that my children don't run in anytime soon. So, as I'm sure you might be too. Wonderful. Let's go to Zandili down in South Africa. Zandili, again, welcome and pleasure to have you here. Perhaps we could learn a little bit from you in your geography and your organization, again, about, you know, where diversity fits within procurement strategy now we're in a COVID-19 world and beyond.
100%. So I think, like all the colleagues have spoken before me, have mentioned that, you know, COVID has definitely unearthed, you know, a new way of doing things, and what used to be priority now has definitely been flipped upside down. But for us, what we've seen is, being a technology company as well, is that technology has become the equalizer. Technology has become the enabler, you know, for both big corporates and also the small suppliers and diverse suppliers. So technology has enabled us to actually being able to work and continue working and continue living. Our children continue to go to school, you know, through home learning, and us to have this great session we're having today virtually, right? But our thing is that we don't want the diverse suppliers to get left behind in that, because as much as it can be an equalizer, but it can also be the single most drawback to increasing and enabling diverse suppliers to thrive. So at Accenture, what we've seen happening and move is that we're now using our diverse development program as a support mechanism to support not only our business, but also to support these suppliers to ensure that they are provided with the tools, the training, and necessary skills to enable them to thrive during COVID, but also post-COVID. I think the program has, you know, shown itself as a great enabler for the business. As Accenture pivots and help our client pivot, we then look to the small suppliers to say, how do we partner, right, and we go to market together. That has been the biggest thing in our South African practice, because with us trying to reach our clients in this new world of COVID, we understand that we need to start seeing our suppliers now as partners.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing is, how do I make my diverse supplier as my partner, so that when we go into this market of COVID and post-COVID, we do that together to make sure that the diverse supplier does not get left behind, right? And enabling them with the technology, enabling them with the skill becomes very much paramount in our support to the diverse suppliers.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Some great themes there. And I particularly like this idea that you're thinking about the risk of smaller suppliers being left behind. So whilst technology enables, it enables if you have access to it. If you don't have access to it, then it disables very quickly and it excludes. So I think that's a great theme that you picked up on there. And also this idea of partnership. And certainly, you know, with my clients, we've seen, and I've been trying to explain for a long time now, is that I believe those organizations that come through crisis better are the ones that look for partnerships, not the ones that look to be adversarial, even though when we're in crisis, our temptation is to become very adversarial because we're anxious and we're worried and we're concerned. So some really interesting themes there, and thank you very much for that. I want to move on a little bit and think about the lessons learned as well, but also what might change. What behaviors are we seeing change in our organizations? So beyond just maybe the categories that we're sourcing or the materials or services that have become more important than perhaps they were before, what are some of the other lessons that we're learning? Perhaps if I could jump back to Jim Cummins and ask, in your organizations, what are some of the lessons you've learned that you see now helping you move forward?
I think some of the key lessons has been, I think when I was talking before about the, introducing the wider, and the wider strategy to the wider stakeholders. And I think that's really been embraced by the team. That, like you were saying there was a bit of panic and where can we get it from? But now when they they take a step back and they look and go, well, how do we deal with that? I think they've seen how it worked, and that's a lesson that they've learned. Well, that opportunity will, and that supply chain is always there. And I think whilst we've taken that approach with key stakeholders, we've also taken that approach with some of our key partner organizations who we work with. So not to keep focusing on PPE, but one of our critical supply chains there, that organization, we've introduced them to numerous other avenues of supply now, and they've been able to grow their business elsewhere with them as well. One of my, I'm really interested in innovation, and I think that's one of the things we've seen, and sort of spotting the next trends and stuff like that. I think they're some of the key lessons now. And I think, I work in sort of real estate and construction, and I think some of the commentary that's been going around in the last few weeks has been the COVID crisis has almost sped up the timeline by sort of 5 to 10 years. So if we look in the UK, the high street's just been going slowly down and down and down and down, with more and more business going online, and what the crisis has done is has exacerbated that. So what opportunities does that give companies to support, and some of the lessons learned there? I think we're seeing some of the companies in recovery, they're on perspex screens now. So whilst it was masks 3 months ago, now everyone's looking for perspex screens. So I think it's sort of there's always going to be something that's most urgent to buy. So the strategy and having the supply base there to support, we've been through the crisis, hopefully it's on the way down now, but as there's always something that new that needs to be bought urgently, we've got a broader range of a supply chain now, and not just us as category managers understand that, but the people at the site that do it. They know they're very agile, they can purchase it through different means if needs be, and things like that. And I think there's some of the key lessons that we've seen.
And internally, Jim, with your stakeholders and your key stakeholders, are you seeing those stakeholders more willing than they would have been to adopt an innovative approach? For example, are you able to push through some of maybe the historical bureaucracy that might have been there?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, 100%. I think, I mean, it's clear, you know, we've seen with the bigger suppliers, they would say communicate, we'll get something shipped to you within 2 weeks, and then it goes quiet 2 weeks later and you don't hear anything. Whereas the diverse suppliers have always been transparent and said, look, it'll be 3 weeks, that's when it's coming, and then they'll keep up communication. And because they are more agile, they are more flexible, they're able to be a lot more personal. And I think that sort of approach and honesty has really resonated with the key stakeholders. So they're certainly in my category, they are very much more on board than they were before the crisis.
Yeah, great, thank you. Will, over to you at GSK Pharmaceuticals. Complex global supply chains involved, of course, with multiple layers of regulatory requirement to change or to adapt. Have you had challenges with extended supply chains? Do you see opportunities now for introducing more diversity into those supply chains as ways of mitigating that risk going forward?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing or opportunity that there will be for diverse suppliers as we go forward is everybody, and this is not just a pharma thing, but I think is a big deal in pharma, excuse me, is that we have to redesign strategy. We had strategies that revolved around whether it was, global strategies for supply chains, utilization of sole sourcing and dual sourcing, in-country dual sourcing. So what do you do when your two separate sources to mitigate risks are now in a country that you can't get supplies out of? So I think that's going to open a door eventually as these strategies develop and people look at how we can better manage the categories, how we can better manage the products and services that we need to be able to look kind of in country at local providers, either as a main part of the strategy or even as having that connection already to have as a backup plan. And as many diverse suppliers on this line know, even just having that connection so that people are aware of you is huge. So even just opening that door to say, yeah, okay, let's find out who's out there, but let's talk to them, because in pharma, and David, as you know, a lot of times we want to go so fast that we don't want to stop to look at all the different options. But now we've learned from this environment, from this situation, that there are ways to pivot, even for us, to have new ways, have faster ways of looking at new strategies and options. So I think that way of thinking and that mindset is going to open the door for that innovation, the fresh ideas, the fresh thoughts that actually were not fresh today. The diverse suppliers have been trying to bring forward these solutions in many ways before, but I think whereas maybe we only looked at a few, now we'll probably be able to look at many, just to know that, hey, we have to be proactive about what's coming ahead.
Yeah, and that idea of dual sourcing, we're always keeping one eye on what we need to do locally, as well as perhaps what we're building globally to protect ourselves from a further risk to extended geographic supply chain. Sounds like a very interesting opportunity for diverse suppliers. Wonderful, thank you. And I like that idea of redesigning strategy. Perhaps we could ask Kiruba over at Canadian Bank. Redesigning strategy for a post-COVID world, Kiruba. Is that something you're thinking of? It feels like we're not in a world where we can just adjust the strategy. It genuinely feels like we're in a world where we've got to rebuild them.
Yeah, I think definitely with what lessons we learned and then some of the action we have taken during this pandemic situation on the supply chain has, start to think about how we're going to re-strategize on our some of the supplier sides are, correct? So one of the things which I have seen, which I was involved and I was leading as well right now on the PPE supplies, is like, we took a shift from a strategy we never had before and taken internally was the responsibility of distributing PPE into our banking operation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was previously it was more driven by the supplier who was handling and then supply needs of all our branches across the nation. And then we had given the transparency of, businesses or branches. We have over 1,500 branches can order products with the suppliers directly and it will be shipped. But when the COVID hit, and then we took the responsibility through another supplier to hold the distribution by ourselves, where we have a control of seeing what's inventory we're going to keep. So that has really shifted to think the future strategies as well. So even though when you look at, there are many other categories has been affected, but this new way of re-strategizing the supply has changed. And it's also leveraged some other areas of, how our existing supply chain was working. Okay, for example, in the branch network, typically the marketing team will send out brochures and print materials to all the branches to promote on what products to push or what products to promote. So we kind of took that model and reshifted towards to supplying PPEs.
Yeah.
So it's a kind of a leverage what you have, other models there. So that's a kind of a good thing to share with the folks from the procurement side. Is like we always look for what is the best way to leverage, but at the same time, we also have to think about from the risk perspective as well. You cannot 100% rely only with the supply chain to meet on these type of challenging stages. So we started to have inventory by ourselves. And then we also started to hold, making sure how our supply chain can hold inventories for our supply. So you have direct responsibility for the bank to hold some inventory, and then we have suppliers trying to make sure they could supply the inventory as well. So those are kind of strategy way, rethinking the supply. But you also have to look at it from shifting of other use of suppliers to repurpose them and leverage them as well, because we have seen many suppliers who are doing certain other things. They kind of shifted, specifically some of the great innovation also, I would say, they brought up some of the diverse suppliers came up and said, hey, we are going through this challenging struggle of getting some specific supply. And then they started to give alternative solutions. Okay? So that's, again, when we talk about innovation, it's not about, only inventing new products of, coming out of the solution with the challenge and able to, fill that gap of challenges is some of the great thing we have seen from some of the diverse suppliers in Canada as well.
Sure, and looking at suppliers for different things than what you'd normally traditionally look for, and it's kind of kickstarted that exploration of what suppliers are capable of beyond what you might traditionally engage them for, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Amy, EY, obviously heavily people-centric organization with, a lot of employees, and you spoke before about the need to look after them and manage them. As COVID and Black Lives Matter and the social inequality challenges rear around the world, how have you seen a more broad desire for diversity across your organization, and is that reflecting in your procurement strategy?
Oh, hugely. And I think, we take a step back, I think from an EY perspective, our inclusive and diversity inclusive agenda is high at EY from all perspectives, but we've had a inclusive and sustainable procurement team in place for 15 years now. So that process has grown, and as Teresa and the team have grown this program into a global a global program. We've really kind of strengthened that in so many different countries. But as we've kind of seen a response to COVID, I think we can safely say that people have come out of this quite impacted, and they've kind of come out with a different mindset of how they want to approach their job, how they want to approach how they work with their family. And I think we've had that from partners from the global exec right through, you know, to all our employees, of a different mindset of how they want to be working and what their work means to them. And you know, EY is made up of a lot of millennials, and what they expect from an employer is very different. You know, they're a different generation, and I think we've seen that in the past. I have noticed that I have a lot more interest now from different parts of the business of, you know, what are you working on, what are you doing, and how can we, you know, start to be involved. And I think there's a greater interest there. And then as we've kind of now also had, you know, a greater awareness with the Black Lives Matters protest, which has reached globally that impact, you know, EY really has taken a strong stance on that and have a 3-pillar action plan that's come out from the US, which I think we're really pleased to see and proud, of course, of how that has straight away kind of come across to our procurement team. And it's what can we be doing and how does that supply chain look, but where are the opportunities and how can we help our diverse suppliers, our Black-owned businesses grow? And I think this will translate through to Australia as well. You know, we've already got a high focus on it. I recently presented with our Indigenous sector leader, Joe Hedger, we presented to the ELT on where we're sitting, you know, how, and they're very interested. They want to know what can we be doing. And I think that, and how and what more and how do we create this awareness? And I think people have come through wanting to do more with their jobs, and people expect more out of corporates. So it's a good position for us to be in, where we can start to really kind of shift that dial a bit.
Yeah, no, interesting. Thank you for that. And if I could jump to Zandili in South Africa and Accenture, how are you seeing those demands from your own employees, and particularly perhaps the millennial and post-millennial generation of employees really driving for a different agenda within Accenture, and how is that showing up in procurement strategy?
Great. I'll definitely agree with Amy. Our workforce is also predominantly millennials now. And what we know about the millennials is that they want to be associated with an organization that cares more than just dollars and cents, right? They want an organization that cares about the immediate environment in which it operates, but also become a global citizen to the global issues that matter, right, at a fundamental and human level. So I'm very proud to be part of an organization that takes those things very seriously and actively address it. You know, I think with COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter, and in South Africa, gender-based violence, it's, you know, the company has stood up to create platforms where we can have these discussions openly with each other, right? And as a Black woman who is in business, I then sit and I tick, you know, supplier inclusion, I tick the gender box, and I tick the Black Lives Matter box, right? But because I'm given a platform to share, whether it's my fears or aspiration, I think that's what the company's responsibility is to its employees. I also would like to touch on how can corporates continue supporting suppliers that are diverse in their own immediate surrounding. Because you see, as corporates, we talk about pivoting to the new and using this, and, you know, the best way, and it's been said in this platform, is that, you know, it's about the partnership and collaboration with your diverse suppliers. Yeah. What we've noticed, and we're helping a client with this, is there's a greater need to localize and to source locally, right? And most corporates in their different procurement spaces have definitely relied on a lot of imports. But now with COVID, it's changed the game and saying you need to procure locally. Where do you even start to do that? But corporates that have a program and a strategy and an intent of a diverse supplier development program, or at least a strategy, you've got a starting point, right?
Yeah.
Because now you've got access to a group of diverse suppliers that are local and can help you pivot into a more localized sourcing strategy. And that's what we're seeing happening, and that's the most important thing. And then in the same breath, you know, a program with a robust strategy and an implementation plan enables you to support your diverse suppliers. As you support them and you grow them to enable them to partner with you in your own strategy and local sourcing strategy. Right. So
Yeah.
for me, I think that's the biggest thing that we can take out of this new world that we're living in, and how can a diverse supplier partner with a corporate, you know, to respond to the current global needs.
Thank you. And I love that idea that you just touched on there about working with one of your clients. And it's very easy in procurement and operations to think solely about supplier diversity. And of course, today, you know, that's our focus. However, a good supplier diversity policy and the right ethos and attitude to it should be shared with your clients, because it also demonstrates to your clients the type of organization that they're working with. And that has to have value at the front end of the business, not just at the back end.
100%, and that's when we start seeing an ecosystem emerging.
Yeah.
You know, I always say when it comes to diversity and inclusion, there is no competitor, because our goal is the same, right? And the more we all open our supply chains to be more inclusive, the more we will start seeing this rippling effect, right? And therefore diverse suppliers. Oops, sorry.
Okay.
and seeing diverse suppliers in and as and it no longer becomes a tick box, right?
Yeah.
Where we're doing an RFP, we're seeing that is this a diverse supplier or not, but it becomes part of our norm that we are looking for suppliers that are in our immediate environment and that look like the clients that we want to serve.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. Thank you very much, Sandili. Thank you for that. I want to stay on the idea of one of the other things you mentioned around local sourcing. And if I could jump back to Jim. Jim, what are some of the challenges you're seeing? How are you going to address some of the challenges to perhaps thinking more locally about sourcing and not just globally? I guess you and I are in the same country, and what COVID has shown is that the rules in Scotland, England, and Wales are different. So even as a country, we have different local nuances. This has got to provide some degree of challenge for you, surely.
Absolutely, and that's before we even mention the word Brexit.
I've avoided the B word for nearly an hour now, Jim.
Sorry. Well, sorry, apologies for that then. Yeah, I mean, it's already been, Will touched on it a little bit. I mean, the category strategies were always sort of a single source. And the main thing that this has all taught us about is, well, you need to broaden that horizon somewhat. You need to have a plan in place to either dual source or, as we're now going to talk about, a more regional source. And I think, whatever your persuasion on politics, there has been a drive towards more regional and local focus throughout the world. And I think, that's becoming more and more prevalent. When we're seeing that, you've also got the sustainability side of things from the environment. So I think as a business, we're seeing a real push and a real incentive from the sites looking for that. I mean, certainly for myself in procuring facilities and construction, there is a little bit of that anyway. You tend to have a lot of firms who you need to find locally. So finding locally competent suppliers is a key metric for stakeholders already. and this is just only going to become more and more, and of a higher emphasis as we go forward. So I think being able to identify those suppliers, and that is where the likes of MSD UK for myself in this region are great. The opportunities to just network and find those suppliers. They're not always a quick Google and you can find them. So being able to have access to those suppliers is fantastic. But certainly we are seeing more and more of a regional focus. I'm predominantly UK based, as you say, so it's mostly England sites we've got. So not too many of the Great Britain concerns just yet, but certainly, we're starting to see more and more strategies looking at that.
Yeah, and if I can build on that, what it feels like is this also lends itself to an ability to think more about community involvement and that extended outreach that corporates can play in national recovery, but by supporting local communities with these strategies that might be more locally focused. Will, if I can jump to you and ask a little bit about GSK and how you think towards that, and seeing this as a help to getting into community involvement and community-based work when you're looking at local sourcing strategy.
Yeah, so David, the one thing that just kept popping into my head as everybody was talking and making such great points, just totally 100% agree with everything that's just been said, especially when Zandili's just first touched on kind of that millennial generation and just the employee engagement side of it, and how that actually translates into the community side. But the one thing I want to say, and this is kind of a message to everybody, the panelists, to everybody participating, is everybody has a purpose out here. Everybody has a platform to be able to drive change. Everybody has an opportunity to be change, to be the change. It does not take a organization to be behind you. It does not take a whole group of people to support you. If you have an idea, if you have a solution, if you have a passion about something, go after it. And that's one thing definitely I've learned through this is that I've had a couple meetings and calls where I've been very unapologetic about how I felt about things, and also calls where I tried to hesitate and hold back a little bit, and people wanted me to bring forward the ideas and the thoughts and the strategy. So it's a learning process for all of us, but I think everybody here is like-minded around the goal of bringing equality, bringing equal opportunity, and it's not just in the workforce diversity, but through the supply chains, and then down to the community engagement. So I know me personally, just kind of telling a little bit personal side, I've realized, without saying I guess too much, but I've realized, hey, there's a connection even between, my own my own school and how I can, tap into supporting my school through my work, through community engagement. I've realized ways that supplier diversity can tap into clinical trial diversity, how we can tap into the relationships on, our government relations side. There's so many different ways that if you just kind of follow kind of where the passion leads you, and go ahead, reach out, schedule meetings, reach out to people, propose your ideas. I've had a few, kind of consultants and suppliers reach out with ideas, and just hearing them out and then proposing that forward. And I think what's happening is now, as the corporations are seeing the benefits to driving these types of things, doors are opening. So I guess kind of my message to everybody is don't hold back. If you have an idea, you have something to push forward, don't hold back, because I always kind of say that there's one person out there that your idea is going to impact. So go ahead and put your idea out there, and as long as one person buys into it, that's all it takes. As long as one person's impacted, that's all that matters. So sorry, long-winded way of answering the question, but I just felt I had to say that.
No, that's wonderful, my friend. I appreciate you saying that, and I think everyone's going to resonate with what you're saying there. And I think it's wonderful that's how you think, and that you're in an environment where you can see that might yield some benefit as well, and great messaging for everybody. So thank you, Will, for that. Can I move to Kiruba again in Canada, and again just talk about this idea of where can you, with a supply diversity policy and an intent and a desire, start to help with community and engagement that's broader than just your own bank?
Yeah, I think from, as I mentioned earlier as well, RBC is a purpose-driven organization, and the purpose of the organization is to help clients thrive and community to be prosper. And with our core values on diversity and client first and integrity, so there are a lot more the organization's principles and values and purpose are driven towards to the community. So we have, done quite a lot of effort on that internally as well. With the current scenario, what's going on, the more emphasis on those things come back. So the basic principles on procurement is to align with the organization purpose and values. Every time when you do the sourcing strategies, there are certain elements always comes into the first few questions is, how we are supporting the local community. So in the bank, those are very fundamental. And I think what I have seen in the bank for the last 10 years, there are many projects were focused towards to creating local jobs. I would say, we have 2 call centers in Canada, which has created, thousands of jobs locally, and those sit within the bank. We never outsource that task to a supplier. So this is a fundamental principle of the bank is like, making sure we play a key role because we believe in full economic inclusion. And the principles are very strong, and with everybody's roles are integrated such a way that we always stick to it. And with the recent COVID things, it's much more going deeper down on making sure every community is also getting the opportunity either directly or indirectly. So we are pushing a lot on, other partners and competitors and industry peers, how they could step up and do as well. Because, we are looking at it's not just only our responsibility. Our leaders are going and influencing the industry as well, and to create opportunity for our local community suppliers. And now with the new focuses, if you look at it from the challenge which we went through, even though we are very strong and close by to the US border, we have seen pretty challenging political challenges across the border, So even when it comes to the supply, the country, both this Canadian, the US border were, exchanging products back and forth on manufacturing. Supply comes in from each other, product gets manufactured and it's shipped out. But this whole pandemic disturbed on that thing. So now when you look at the supplier strategies, you also have to think about where those companies are sitting in. Even though if they have a local manufacturing, are they really a local company, correct? So that kind of thing comes up right now to say what kind of a governmental, influences they might have when situation happens in, correct? So you might see same from the pharma industry as well. When the vaccine comes in, are they going to allow the vaccine to be shipped into various countries or not? So you're going to look at it from the risk perspective. When you measure the supply chain, you're going to open up all these kind of areas as well. Not when we look at local, even if it is a company from outside doing some great work in the local community, but are they truly local? So So that's the kind of thing is going to change in the future as well, making sure we are giving a much more stronger partnership with the true local companies.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Kiruba. Guys, in the interest of time, I've just got one more thing I'm going to ask of our panel, and then we'll try and take a couple of questions if we can. So Amy, if I can jump to you, and again, thank you for hanging in there. I know it's late where you are. If you could say maybe one sentence or two to the diverse suppliers listening, what would that be right now?
I think it's just keep getting in touch. And I think I was just thinking before around, when Will was saying, and definitely passion is what comes with our role, but with the good thing about our companies is that they do have us in these roles. You know, they've specifically identified the opportunity to do this and embrace it and push it forward as a company or a corporate agenda. And I think take advantage of that. Find out who the right people are to talk to. I know my whole team are always so interested to hear what's going on and give advice. It might not be for us, but we might know of somebody else or another company that we might be able to find an opportunity. It's a really amazing community of supply diversity professionals that I love to engage with at Supply Nation, and then globally hearing the same messages come through. I think we've always got the time. It's just a matter of getting in contact with us and really take advantage of the opportunities at the moment that we're starting to see. Have a think around our supply chain, have a look about the new opportunities that are going to come out and what else maybe you could do different in your business that you're not doing at the moment. I think is probably the biggest thing. You know, take this time to stop and pause and think, what do I want to do differently? What else can I offer that I maybe can just change in how I'm doing business at the moment?
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Amy, and thanks again. Zandili, a couple of words from you to close that you might want to say to some diverse suppliers who might be listening.
Awesome. This is an opportunity to really make it. COVID is an opportunity for small businesses to thrive in what they're doing. As long as you stay your course, you add technology, and don't be afraid to go to corporates that have the same alignment of capabilities and go to them and saying that I can be that partner in your procurement and servicing your clients. You know, diverse suppliers should be bold enough to go and put on the table their value propositions to corporate, because corporates are looking for those diverse suppliers.
Wonderful. Great. Be bold. I heard it. Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Zandili. Thank you for your time today. Jim, back to you. My friend, a couple of words for suppliers listening.
Yeah, I've got to echo what's just been said, really. You know, we are looking for these suppliers. Certainly, in my space, innovation with environmental sustainability is a huge driver for us. So suppliers operating in that space, think about what the opportunities are that are out there. I think the panel's given several of our challenges and things like that. How can you meet those challenges? How can you make our lives easier?
Brilliant. Thanks, Jim. Will, any closing words from you, sir?
Definitely. Two things actually. One is learn from others. I know me personally, I've learned a tremendous amount, even from my peers right here on the GSDA Advisory Council and the GSDA Advocacy presidents. Just learned a tremendous amount and have been able to apply that into my core and how I move forward in my role and just, you know, just as a person, period. But also number two is just keep doing what you're doing, right? Because it takes patience. I know it's frustrating at times when you feel like your ideas are not being heard right away, but just keep pushing, keep doing what you're doing, keep being innovative, keep coming up with new solutions, because now you have a time like this where now people want to talk to you more than they might have before. I mean, you never know what will be the next event, what will be the next thing that will make your company and bring it into the spotlight, whereas you might not think it is today. So just keep doing what you're doing and keep learning.
Wonderful. Thanks, Will, and thanks for joining. Kiruba, last word from you, sir, and then we'll hand back.
Great. Again, my view, and my recommendation to the suppliers is to focus your local corporate clients and relationship with them, build a relationship much stronger with your local clients, and then expand the global opportunities through them. So that could be my sincere advice at this stage is we all seen how the global thing has been affected, but when you have your local corporate clients who could really champion you to see the support and then connect them to their global operation, that could be the best way to keep your clientele as well, to have at least 80-20, 80% you focus on your local clients and through them expand into the global market could be my sincere advice.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your time today as well. I'm going to hand us back now, I think, to Cassandra. But before I do, I just want to thank the panel very much indeed for your engagement. Thanks for your thoughts. Thanks for sharing. I'm hoping folks around the world who are listening have found it useful. It's certainly been a pleasure engaging with you all from my perspective. So if Cassandra is there, could I hand back to you?
Yes, thank you very much, David. Can you hear me?
I can, yes. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
Thank you and the panel. That's been incredible. I do have one question, so I'm just going to see if we can squeeze this in before we end.
Okay.
Okay. There's been a lot of talk on sort of the commitment and everything to supplier diversity, which I think is phenomenal. We now know as businesses are starting to reopen globally, what has come out is what are the key opportunities that the diverse suppliers can assist the corporates in delivering on? What are these key opportunities that need to be filled in the short term and the longer term? And how are these being communicated so we can get the MBEs involved in what's going on?
Okay. Let's just try and push that through the panel quickly. So if we start, perhaps we could start with Zandili. Did you hear the question? Have you got any thoughts?
Yep, I got the question. So Accenture, obviously, our biggest spend is in people. So, I mean, that continues being our biggest spend. And I think with COVID, the spend, we've seen a little bit of a shift in terms of as our workforce is working from home, how do we then support them, both from a tech, but also from a human element, right? So things like we've seen a lot of online training, online engagements that we're doing with coaches. That spend has increased, but also mental issues of mental health, supporting our workforce as they are outside the office. How do we support that? So it does vary from region to region. I mean, we are a global company, but any diverse supply, like I mentioned earlier on, you need to be bold enough to approach the corporate with your value proposition, because that spend might not been discovered yet, and you come with a value proposition to unearth that spend.
Wonderful. I'll take one more answer to the question, then I'll give it back to you, Cassandra, because I'm conscious of time. Will, any thoughts from GSK and your good self?
I think one of the best things to say here is that the best idea is we don't even know what we need yet. So I would think around return to work strategies. What might happen if there's a second coming of COVID. We just don't know what we might need yet. I think that's something I want to make sure everybody's thinking about, on top of the obvious of the virtual meeting environments, the PPE needs, but technology wise, we've seen really cool virtual conferences now. I mean, so but think of the ideas that nobody's thinking of yet, that you have the innovation and the mindset to think towards and put the time into.
Wonderful. Thank you. Return to work strategy. There's a whole webinar just on that one, I think. But Cassandra, back to you.
Okay, thank you very much. As we wind down, I'm going to turn this over to Helena Hutton, and Helena will close us out for the day. But from myself to all of you, thank you very much. Now over to Helena.
Thank you, Cassandra. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. So thank you so much to our incredible guests today and to everyone who joined us. And thank you, David, for once again expertly guiding the conversation. We really appreciate, David, you jumping in and helping us have these really important discussions. I hope everyone today, one moment, I'm returning back to the main session. So I hope everyone today enjoyed the session today. And as each of us comes up with some sense of normalcy while still adapting to the constantly changing conditions. We're really here to collaborate and work together. And we hope that you continue to join GSDA with upcoming sessions. We have 2 webinars that are still coming up, and the next one is July 8th. So we look forward to hearing from our diverse owned companies that are going to join us and talk about their transformation, their pivots to making sure that their customers are supported, and to give you all information about their experience. So please join us, and please look for information from emails, from Mayank, from Cassandra, from all the other trade organizations so that you can get the information and join us. So thank you again, and look forward to seeing you on July 8th. Cassandra?
Thank you for everyone. A great way to start the week, a great way to start the day, great information, and have a wonderful day, and we'll see you July 8th. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye now.
Bye.